Anyway, again, a good evening, and it's my name is Richard Corneal, and I'm the principal of Assumption University. And it's my pleasure to welcome you here tonight to this iteration of the Christian Culture Series. Our theme for tonight is Imagining Mercy in the City. And there are a number of thank yous to be offering tonight. And right off the top, I would like to express my gratitude on behalf of Assumption University to Hospice for allowing us to host the event here tonight in this wonderful facility. So thank you very much. So I arrived in Windsor and to my role at Assumption University in the summer of 2015, so I'm still fairly new to the area. However, it didn't take me very long to realize that there are some incredible people in this city and in this region who are doing some very important work on a day-to-day basis by providing important care to people who are vulnerable and in need across the region. In other words, these are people who on a daily basis are doing the works of mercy. They are people who are feeding the hungry, who are giving shelter to the homeless. They're providing care to people who are facing physical and mental health challenges, and these are just a few examples. So when it came time to plan for this year's Christian Culture Series, we wanted to make sure that we created an opportunity to bring some of these leaders together and share with us what it's like on a day-to-day basis to be providing this care to people who are vulnerable and in need in our region, and perhaps even to challenge us in a way to think about what it means to go back in our own lives and to live out and work on the works of mercy. So, without further delay, it's my distinct pleasure and privilege to introduce, our tonight's speakers. And I'm going to introduce them all at once, and I'll introduce them in the order that they're going to do their presentations. And then when the presentations are over, we'll have time for a brief question and answer. So our first speaker is Janice Caffer. Janice is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Hotel du Grace Healthcare. Janice's role previously at Hotel du Grace was as the VP Clinical Programs and Chief Nursing Executive. I had to look up what CNE meant, so Chief Nursing Executive.
It could be many things, right?
True. Prior to coming to Windsor, Janice served as the VP and CNE at a district health authority in Nova Scotia. Janice draws her strength and inspiration from her friends, her colleagues, and particularly from her family. Her husband of 35 years, Bernie, her children, Kate and Matt, as well as her son-in-law, Jason, all keep Janice focused on the importance of family and community. Janice is an exceptionally proud Amma, and I think that's probably how the grandchildren say it, to her grandchildren, Allison, Nathan, and Courtney, who are the light of her life. Next, we have from the Hospice of Windsor and Essex County, Carol Derbyshire and Father Matthew Durham. Carol has been involved with the hospice movement and the Hospice of Windsor and Essex since its inception in 1979 by helping to establish and completing the very first patient care training program. Since 1985, Carol has held the position of Executive Director of the Hospice, which is the largest community-based hospice palliative care facility in Canada, and has grown under her direction to include more than 50 wellness programs, providing services ranging from lifestyle support to social work, community nursing and spiritual care to the community, and residential home services, all at no cost to patients and their families from the time of diagnosis. Father Matthew Durham is a Roman Catholic Brazilian priest and also the Director of Community Engagement and Advancement here at the hospice. In his current role, Father Matthew leads a team of professional staff that communicates the culture and values of hospice, raising awareness and resources to support more than 2,000 patients and families in Windsor-Essex annually. He is a community and pastoral leader and former professor at the University of Alberta, demonstrating a passion for leadership, volunteerism, community service, and continuing professional development, including his own doctoral studies at the University of Toronto. And our final speaker is Ron Dunn. Ron is currently the CEO and Executive Director of the United Church Downtown Mission of Windsor. Described as a man with a plan, Ron has helped to lead the mission from a smaller mom-and-pop organization to its current status as one of Windsor-Essex's most recognized social service agencies. Ron's accomplishments include being a business professional, published author, and local radio host. Most importantly to Ron, however, is he can boast about his loving wife, Ruth, of 26 years, and their two amazing sons, David and Jacob. So please join me in welcoming our presenters this evening.
So thank you very much, Richard, and I'd like to express my gratitude to Richard, Cecile, and the entire Assumption team for inviting me tonight. This is a topic that I have not had the privilege to speak to before. As a CEO at Hotel du Grace Healthcare and previously in my role as a Chief Nursing Executive, I've spent a lot of time talking about quality patient care and safety in a hospital and staff engagement and a lot of different things that are the language of my business. And so to prepare for tonight, I spent a little time digging into what is mercy. So what I'd like to start with tonight is some very simple words. And words, as we know, have tremendous meaning, and they have a meaning for each and every one of you as I say these words. So when I looked up the definition of mercy, here are some of the words that the dictionary speaks to. Clemency, charity, forbearance, mercifulness, quarter, and words that are the opposite from a dictionary perspective: cold-heartedness, hard-heartedness, inhumanity, merciless, pitiless. And so when I thought about what I was going to talk about tonight, I thought to myself, I can talk about Hotel du Grace Healthcare as an organization. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that, because anytime I have the opportunity to talk about Hotel du Grace Healthcare, I take that opportunity. And I'd like to introduce you to our healing ministry and our mission. But I'd also like to share some of the relevance of those words and some of the ways in which those words are operationalized and realized in my organization on a day-to-day basis by the staff, the physicians, and the volunteers at Hotel du Grace Healthcare. So as I start this evening, I'd like to recognize that there's a number of my team here. There's some folks who actually deliver care. Some of our frontline staff, won't embarrass anybody, some of our board, and some of our leadership here tonight. So the first thing I'd like to start with is just to outline a little bit about who Hotel du Grace Healthcare is. For those of you who haven't heard the news, we moved from Willette Avenue. That happened about 3 years ago. And so you'll see in the paper an awful lot of times discussion about Hotel du and Hotel du on Willette Avenue. That's not us anymore. About 3 years ago, under the leadership of Carol Derbyshire as our board chair at the time, Hotel du Grace Healthcare and Windsor Regional went through an amalgamation or alignment or a swapping of services. And so now Hotel du Grace Healthcare is over on Prince Road. And what we do on Prince Road is in many ways what we started doing 128 years ago. And that is really serving the ministry of healing for those that are marginalized, vulnerable, and in need of service in a way that we hadn't done for a long time on Willette Avenue. So what we did when we moved over to Prince Road was we re-examined our mission. And as an organization that's faith-based, that's Catholic-sponsored, mission is everything to us. It isn't just something that's on the wall. It drives our decision. It informs all the aspects of what we do. It informs this talk in many ways about what mercy means at Hotel du Grace Healthcare. And so the mission for Hotel du Grace Healthcare is, and I'm going to read it to you, to serve the healthcare needs of our community, including those who are vulnerable and or marginalized in any way, be it physically, socially, or mentally. As a Catholic-sponsored healthcare organization, we provide patient-centered care, and that's some of the words that we use in terms of patient care, quality, safety, treating the body, the mind, and the spirit. We do this through innovation, compassionate, and innovative care to those we serve. And so when you think about those words, like I said, the words that I found in the dictionary about mercy carry a lot of weight, and so does the mission of Hotel Dieu Grace Healthcare. And it really, like I said, informs us. The other piece of work that informs what we do and how we interpret mercy in our organization is our vision. And our vision is to be a trusted leader, transforming healthcare and cultivating a healthier community. But what does that mean in the context of mercy? That means not just providing care inside the walls of the organization, it means reaching outside the walls of the organization to where people are, where they are living their lives in a vulnerable or marginalized situation, or just in a frail situation where they are at risk of having a health challenge or concern. We take very seriously our values of respect, teamwork, compassion, and social responsibility. And we use all of those foundational documents. I got to take my one shoe off because I've got 2 broken toes. So excuse me. There, I'm better now. It looks a little hop along, but it'll be fine. We use all of those foundational documents in terms of our service delivery. So we provide services in a number of core areas. We provide all of the rehabilitation services in Windsor now. Adult mental health from a tertiary perspective, so that longer-term rehab component. Children and youth mental health services through the Regional Children's Centre. We have the 20-bed palliative care and complex medical, and we have a range of outpatient services. And for tonight's talk, one of the things that's important for us is the realization of the mission. We've recently initiated a mission achievement team that really helps us as a hospital to decide how do we start reaching outside the walls of our community? How do we live our mission outside of traditional healthcare services? And Ron is one of the members of our community partners that are on that mission achievement team. So there's some nice synergy with the work that happens in terms of feeding the hungry. But I'm a CEO. I used to be a nurse. My mother says I'm not a real nurse anymore, but I assure you I still am a real nurse. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what mercy means and how does it look in a hospital setting. And as Richard said, I'd like you to be thinking about mercy in your own interactions with your neighbors and your friends and the people that take a long time in the mall or at the lineup at Walmart. And what does mercy mean, and how do you show mercy, and how do you show kindness and empathy? So I'm going to say a word, and then I'm going to kind of preface a little bit of a patient story. And I'm not going to make any judgments. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the story. And I'll leave you to summarize in your own mind whether it's a merciful story or not. So the first word is dignity. And dignity to me is part of mercy. And so the first story is an end-of-life story. And I don't want to steal the hospice thunder. But I wanted to share a little story about a client, and none of these stories are representative of a single client. They are going to be representative of a collection of clients or patients. A client who had no one at the end of life, a client who had no living family, who had behaviors and challenges, who reached out not expecting anyone to be there at the end of their life. And there's programs that Hospice and Hotel Dieu Grace Healthcare operate called No One Dies Alone. And that's a part of dignity. But the other part of dignity that I wanted to talk about was how people can rally around someone who's alone to help them to make sure that their death, their burial, how they pass from this life into the next is one that is shared, is supported, is with love and kindness. And our staff did that for a patient in our organization, and does that many times over with patients in our organization. But what about when somebody is so alone that there's no one to pay for their funeral? There's no one to stand at the graveside. There's no one to pay respects at the end. And how many times does that happen? And how do we, as an organization that's involved in palliative care, how does hospice, who's involved in palliative care, how do we support that transition and show mercy along the way? The second story, in the word I'll start with, is stigma. And as you heard, we provide mental health services, both for children and youth and families, and for adults who have long-standing issues with mental health. And so a patient, 19 years old, comes to our hospital. and is potentially immediately judged as a behavioral issue. History of concussion, acting out behaviors, schizophrenia, unmanageable, unmanaged, violent, maladaptive behaviors, undischargeable. The family is unable to care, unwilling to care. How do we show mercy? What does mercy look like in a situation like that? You read about it in the papers all the time. You see it on the news. You hear about it everywhere you go. You see, I was in Chicago last week with Catholic Health International, and we were on the train. And there was a gentleman, a very large gentleman, got on the train beside one of my board members and myself. And the whole time that we were on the train, he was talking to someone. He didn't have earbuds in, there was no phone. He was really talking to someone that was not visible to any of the rest of us. And I could see the people on the train looking at this very large gentleman. And you can see them shifting in their seats. And you can see the fear. And you can see how they're making judgments. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. Is that mercy? What does mercy look like in that kind of a situation? And so we work with patients like that every single day. Our staff work with patients like that every single day. And I would hope they show mercy every day. But we're on a journey, as all of us are, institutionally and individually. The next word I'll use is fear. And so imagine you're that 19-year-old young man, or the family member of that 19-year-old man, and you're in crisis, and you have to go into the emergency department of your local hospital anywhere in Canada that isn't specializing in mental health issues. And what does that look like? Do you and your family member find mercy in that place? Do the staff show you mercy in that place? What does that look like? And one of our physicians, I asked her for a story a little bit, and what she said was one of the most disheartening things as a physician is to know that your patient is going into a department, into an organization, into a situation, into a doctor's office, whatever it is, and that entry will immediately show them judged. And immediately there will be barriers to their care. What is mercy? Where is mercy there? And I think I'm probably running out of time. So my last story, it's 2 words, New Canadians. And so we live in Windsor, and we're just a little bit south of the United States, where we can see there are great debates about what does society look like. What is mercy in a society? What is generosity in a society? What is kindness? In our situation, I'm very proud of this particular story because our staff took a look at a situation with a new Canadian family who had trust issues, who had unknown ability to navigate the system, and who had a child in crisis. But it wasn't just the child in crisis, the whole family was in crisis. And everyone was looking for something, but they didn't know what that something was. But they knew that what they were looking for was something they'd not had before. And they knew that it was a leap of faith to come to an institution and ask for help, because they hadn't been in that situation as new Canadians in their past life. So the family came and was vulnerable to our staff, was vulnerable in our city, and when they arrived at our organization, were greeted with, how can we help? I'd like to think that happens every single time they come to our organization, but I know from Reza and some of the information that we've heard that new Canadians really struggle with access to our healthcare system. I don't think they always find mercy in our healthcare system. But for this particular instance, the family was not only supported, the child was supported. There was above and beyond support to the social aspects of providing care. And so I would say, in that particular instance, we had a good example of mercy. And I think given that I'm probably at the end of my time, I'm looking at the clock, I think I'm at 22 minutes, so I'm 2 minutes over. What I would say is that at the end of my speech is the words from a patient. These are words that came to me with my request to gather information for you. And so I'd like you to hear from one of our patients. I once again want to express how grateful I am to you in the program. You have changed my life and helped me find my authentic self. I have always thought I was a positive person and did not even recognize how my fears keep me from growing. I'm starting to sleep better and feel better, and I'm more open to seeing the positives in my life. I'd like to think we all provide some of that to someone in our community, somewhere in our experiences. And this client ended with, may God bless each and every one of you. Thank you for listening to me tonight.
Jan, you're in a hospice palliative care facility. Kick both your shoes off.
Yeah, I thought that was a little too
We're into pain management here. Go to it. Good evening, everyone. I'm really pleased to be here with you tonight. And we operate as a team here at hospice, a multidisciplinary team, because we believe no one person can take care of that patient and family. It takes many people coming to the table, bringing their gifts, and supporting the patients and the families. So in the true spirit of teamwork, I'm going to be talking about a research project that hospice is involved in. Dave's looking at me thinking, I know what you're going to talk about. And Matt's going to, and some of our staff are going to talk about some stories and give you more information on hospice so we can get it all in here tonight. And I think Jan's talk was a wonderful segue into this project that we're involved in. And about 2 years ago, I was asked to sit on a provincial task force the minister had struck to look at hospices in the province. They're at various stages of development. They're funded all over the map. There's no rhyme or reason to a lot of the funding formulas, and the minister was trying to get a handle on all of this. And as at one of the meetings, I was asked to do a presentation on hospice, Windsor-Essex, and I did. And one of the people on the committee, she was the co-chair, asked me if I could spend a little bit of time after the meeting with her. She had an idea she wanted to pitch. And I said, okay. And she started talking about a collective impact model that she had swirling around in her brain. And I said, well, tell me what you mean. And she started to talk about how she was a director in home care in the ministry for over 20 years. And she said, we keep trying to help people out in the community that are caring for their loved ones. And she said, we still don't have it right. We come up with one model after another, and we tell hospices and agencies, okay, this is what you have to do now. And she said, we're not making it. We're not doing enough. And I said, yeah, I agree. And she said, and there'll never be enough staff to do all the work. Mm-hmm. And she said, so what I've been thinking about is if we could rally a community to look at, and by that, rally the formal caregivers in the community, people like the Alzheimer's Society, hospice, the hospitals, and bring them all together. And then start looking in neighborhoods for community leaders and people that we can rally around patients and families. And this really caught my attention. At first, she's a lawyer, first of all, and she is off the charts brilliant. So I was having a real tough time understanding where she was going with all of this. And she said, when I listen to you talk about Essex County and the support and the way people rally in Essex County, I thought that this would be a good community to start to study, roll out this research project, and see what we can do in Essex County. So what we decided to do was focus on those people who are perhaps getting into early Alzheimer's, dementia, becoming more feeble, living at home. Many of these people would probably be quite isolated. Their families aren't here. They're not really well enough or feeling stable enough to get out and about. And if we could start to identify some of these people and get in early and help them, and start to create a team around them, surround them with those things that they need. And there were a few things that she said that I really liked. She said we would go and see them, and instead of, and I was famous for this, I admit it, and I didn't realize it until I got involved in this. If someone called and asked for help, I would immediately go into the spiel. Oh yes, we can do this, we can do this, 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 and this. Rhyme it all off, and I've been around 37 years, so I know it. I don't even have to think about it. And she said, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to go in and we're going to sit down with these people and we're going to say, what do you need to improve your quality of life? Tell us, and let's put it together with you. Let's see who we can rally around you that will help you have a better quality of life. And I thought, I liked that. Because I remember talking to a woman who called me on the phone, and she said, you know, Carol, I was wondering if hospice could help me. And I said, well, tell me, you know, what's going on? Well, she wasn't well. Her family didn't live in Windsor. And she said, I'm just, you know, I've got a diagnosis. I'm not real sick, but I'm just not well enough to do things like I used to. And I went into my spiel. Oh, we could send a nurse. We could do this. We could do that. And dead silence on the other end of the phone. And she said, oh, I guess you can't help me because I don't need any of those things. And I said, finally, oh, what do you need? She said, I need someone to wash my windows. I said, oh, she said, you know, all my life I prided myself in being a good homemaker. She said, I like my floors to glisten. I like my windows to be pristine clean. And she said, as I'm sitting here talking to you, I'm looking out my front window and I am so ashamed. And I'm too tired and too weak to get out on the ladder anymore. I said, I am so sorry that I jumped the gun. And I said, we will help you. I know many volunteers at hospice who would be out there in a flash and love to help you. She said, really? I said, yes. And while we're talking, I said, I want you to think about what else you need. You don't have to answer me today. Just let me know, and we will do whatever it is that will help you get along better at home and feel better about your surrounding. Very simple. Some things will be simple that people need. Other things may be bigger and require a lot more people to come to the table. But that's what we want to get moving in this community. And so I said, I'll bring this back to my board, but knowing the board, I know they're going to be all in on this. I said, what do you need from us? And she said, well, if you could kind of host this, and if you could rally some of the community members, some of the community leaders, patients, and let's bring people together and let's start talking and let's start planning. I said, oh, we can do that. We're famous for that in Windsor. And Essex County, whenever there's a problem, we all come together. I told her, I said, you know, we always voted the wrong party in, so we had to learn to be really creative, and we do it well. And so I came back and I talked to the board, and they really liked this idea. And so we sent out invites. And that first meeting, she came down from Toronto, And she was sitting in my office, and someone said, "I think everybody's pretty well here." And we had the auditorium open. She came walking in, and it was standing room only. And we had close to 200 people at the first shout out that were interested. And over the next 2 years, we met faithfully every 2 weeks, and we talked about what would this compassionate community, you could even call it a community of mercy as we talk here, and what would that look like? And how are we going to do this? And we would have round table discussions, and it was a cross-section of the whole county. And every couple of weeks, more people would join us. And we'd have a leaders table where community leaders came in. We would have patients, family tables. Anybody that we could think of was welcome. And each week, we would review what we had done 2 weeks before that, so that you could come in at any point, pick up where we are, and move along with us. We're at the point now that we have, including the university, almost 11 universities across Canada involved in this, because this is something that so many of people are looking at, collective impact. There will never be enough staff. And what we're doing is going back to the way many of us were raised, where we all knew our neighbors. We watched out for the young children in our neighborhoods, the elderly. I always tell people that my mom and dad came from a small community in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. And when my mother came here and had us, I have a sister and 3 brothers, and she would always send my sister and I out to babysit for the young moms in the community, in the neighborhood, and my brothers had to go and shovel snow or cut grass. And it's kind of a joke, but I was 16 before I realized that people got paid to babysit. A girl in my class had this great outfit on, and I commented on it, and she said, "Oh, I got this with my babysitting money." I thought, really? I came home and I told my mother, and she said, "Shame on her." But it was about caring for other people, showing mercy, showing compassion, being there for people that couldn't do for themselves, who probably in their life helped others. And that's what we're trying to it's a movement. It has become a movement. We have over 100 agencies, associations, groups involved now, and it's growing. We're about to pilot in Leamington, as Zane knows, next month. Then we'll bring it to Windsor in April. We have been doing little tests along the way, because the one thing we don't want to do is come barreling out with this, that we are going to help you, and let people down. So we're trying to make sure that it is done properly. We have recruited here at hospice 33 people that have agreed to be coaches. And these families or these patients or clients, whatever, or just people, will, if they would like a coach, will have one assigned, and that person will work with that patient in need to put together the team of professionals working with neighbors, anybody that is willing to come to the table and help out. And this isn't just for a week or two. This is during this person's lifetime, so that hopefully we can improve their quality of life, and hopefully they will live longer and better. And the bonus is we'll all be very proud of what we're doing. I don't think there's a better feeling in the world when you can reach out and help somebody that isn't able to help themselves. And you know, the best part about all of this to me is, and things happen for a reason. the thing that really got me, I thought, you know, if we can rally Essex County as a community to do this, and with all these researchers and all these universities that have come to the table, and they're going to help us develop the toolkits, and we're going to be able to evaluate all of this. At the end of the day, wouldn't it be wonderful to apply to the World Health Organization so that we could be designated as a compassionate community? Think of that, what that would do for us as a community, for people that are looking to relocate, to send their kids to university or college, any of those things. It enhances the community, and it really talks about who we are. I think a community is defined by the way they treat their elderly and those people in need. So that's what we're working on with all these other community partners, and it has been a tremendous experience watching people. We all know one another for the most part, but we really didn't ever have the opportunity to listen to all the things that are offered in this community and to start integrating. You know, for years now, the Lynn, and Dave Cook knows this, would bring us all together and say, okay, we want you to integrate. And we'd all go, okay. And then we go back and get into our work and nothing ever happened. Since we've been all coming together, they're doing it on their own. They're saying, I didn't know that you do this. We do that. Let's do it together. Agencies, 5 and 7 agencies that do similar things are starting to come together. And the spin-offs to this are going to be amazing. We're a compassionate community. We all know that. Now we're going to prove it to the rest of the world. Thank you.
The tag team. I also want to echo Carol in thanking Assumption University for inviting us. In particular, this is special because one of my own confreres, a Basilian father, Father Stan Murphy, began this series back in 1934, I believe. So it has quite the heritage and history in our community of Windsor. I thought I'd start by quoting someone who was just recently canonized, Mother Teresa. She said, "The biggest disease today is not leprosy or tuberculosis, but rather the feeling of being unwanted." Hospice was founded in 1979 to help ensure folks always felt wanted. Our approach, as Carol said, is holistic in nature, and you'll hear about that in a few minutes around how our social workers, our spiritual care providers, our nurses, our physicians, and an army of volunteers, we're now 749, I think, as of yesterday, how they go out and they serve people in their own homes, how we care for people here in our residential homes, and how we also care for people in this wellness center that you're sitting in tonight that has over 50 wellness programs. As you know, tonight our theme is mercy. And I believe that mercy is an action. It's a doing. This year, the Pope has declared this year the year of mercy. And I think it's an invitation for all of us to get involved in our communities. And of course, I'm going to do a shameless plug and invite all of you to become hospice volunteers. And you can do that by getting involved, helping with direct patient care, through administration, through fundraising, through working in our residential home as a cook or a greeter. All of these things you're able to do, or even maybe just praying for us at home if you can't get out here and do it. All of these contribute to the greater good of our Windsor-Essex community. Before I hand the mic over, as Carol said, we've invited some of our staff to come forward and to share with you some of their stories of how they've seen mercy in their everyday work here at hospice. But before I do so, I want to share another quote. This quote is from Pope Francis, and he says, "Mercy is the force that reawakens us to new life and instills in us the courage to look to the future with hope." I'll read it again. "Mercy is the force that reawakens us to new life and instills in us the courage to look to the future with hope." Hope is found daily at hospice, and I can attest to that when I walk the hallways. And tonight, we want to share with you some of these stories. You're going to hear from Joe Perry, who's our Director of Patient Family Services, Brianne Thompson, who's our Coordinator of Psychosocial Services and our Wellness Center, and Reverend Paul Sharrow, who's our Coordinator of Spiritual Care. And so now I'll invite Joe.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Joe Perry, and I have the privilege to be Director of Patient and Family Services for Hospice. I don't have to imagine mercy. I see it every day. I'm going to share with you just very quickly 3 short vignettes that I feel are exemplify the mercy that goes on, not just within our hospice organization, but our community as a whole. Carol and the board, in their great wisdom, decided that, I think, I'm not exactly sure, probably in the mid-90s, that hospice just wasn't one building, it wasn't just one program, that there needed to be a village. There needed to be a village of us all coming together to support the patient and the families. And within the context of that village, and if you've ever been here before, you can see that there's many different houses on here and our different residential homes now. But there's also another village, and we are all part of that village. Our community partners, the public, the volunteers, everyone that resides within our community that brings their gifts to the table to make our community more compassionate and caring. One story I'd like to share with you is somebody that was from Windsor and moved out west as I did, in the 80s, and because the streets were paved with gold. And then one day he got diagnosed with a life-threatening illness. And he wanted to come back to Windsor to be with his family. But he had no hope. As you can imagine, coming back and not being able to access medical care would be so distressing. So as I see in my work every day, we come together as not only a staff here at Windsor, but within our greater community, right from politicians, from CCAC, our hospital partners, our community partners, to regardless of what the situation is, that we can wrap services around those that are in need. And the person was able to live out the remainder of their life with comfort, care, compassion, and dignity. Another story I'd like to share was a young man who was recently just married. And one of the things that he was striving for was to further his education and get his graduate degree. But such was not going to happen. There wasn't time left to complete everything that needed to be the requirements of his degree. Yet, we all kind of came together as a compassionate community, along with the university, to ensure that that degree too could be delivered, because he had met the requirements. He didn't have maybe perhaps all the I's and T's dotted and crossed, but he had met the requirements to fill that degree, and that was something that really gave him great peace and comfort. And the caring didn't stop there, as we provided bereavement support then to his new wife and the remainder of their family. And that's one of the things that I find, that mercy and compassion, it doesn't stop just with the death. It carries on. We continue to carry on and support our patients and their families regardless of where they are in their journey. The last example that I just want to briefly give was something that happened and I was involved with when I first came to be a staff member at hospice. And we had a teenager who was dying. And one of the things that he wanted to do was learn how to play guitar. And I just happened to be a guitar teacher. Sometimes mercy and compassion can be involved when perhaps somebody might look at it and say, this really doesn't make any sense. There's not going to be time, he's not going to be a professional musician and stuff. But once again, we reach out and wrap our services around as Janice so eloquently said, the needs of our patients and their families. And the concert that he gave for his mom and dad would rival any concert anywhere. Thank you.
There's a theme.
Yes, there is a theme. So I'm Brianne Thompson, and for those of you who know me, you know that I have been extremely blessed by hospice through my life. When I was young, hospice actually helped my family when my grandfather was diagnosed, and I myself, as a child, received support from hospice. So the hospice bug, so you say, was planted deep within my heart as a child, and I knew that when I was older I wanted to be able to give back as well and give to the community what our family received as well. So I think that this is a wonderful thing that Assumption is doing, and getting people together to focus on a specific topic, and mercy is such a wonderful topic to talk about, especially when it comes to hospice. So as a Christian, I do believe that working at hospice is not a job. I believe that it's a calling, and I believe that we're here to do anything that we can for our families that we work with. So I specialize in working with children. So the majority of the children that I work with have an oncology diagnosis themselves. So that adds a very difficult dynamic to a family that we pray no one should ever have to go through. So what happens when a child is diagnosed is the entire family's dynamic change. All the family's roles change, and their life is turned upside down. What they normally do after school, for example, children coming home, doing homework, well, someone makes dinner. I don't want to be gender, stereotypical by saying mom or anything like that, but someone's making dinner. They have a nice meal together. They play, bedtime, go to bed. That doesn't happen anymore. Oftentimes, children are unable to attend school due to immune system difficulties. If they do attend school, when they come home, they have multiple appointments, whether it be at the hospital or physio or with numerous different healthcare practitioners. So the whole dynamic changes. The siblings of that child then feel oftentimes left out. I work with a lot of siblings that then are presenting with behaviors and sometimes coming forward with their own somatic symptoms, trying to get some type of attention as well themselves. So I work with many children that they get support from London or Toronto in order to go through their whole protocol of what they need to do in order to try to fight the cancer. So when they are there, typically what happens, and the majority of the families that I work with go through a very similar process, you have one parent with that one child up in London or Toronto, and the other parent trying to manage and trying to keep some type of normalcy with the other children here. Well, what we've seen in so many of the cases with our families is it almost becomes a little family unit of siblings over here, and almost like, and I can attest to this because I'm an only child, but an only child kind of perspective over here. When they come back home from London or Toronto, it's very difficult for them to then just get back into regular life and have those normal relationships that they had before. So we were seeing a lot of problems amongst the siblings, and that was causing a greater stress to the parents as well, because they already have the guilt of all of the changes that are going on in their children's lives. So we developed programming here at hospice in order to try to help the families the best that we can, in order to help them with all of the changes that happen in life. So one of the groups that we have is a sibling support group. So that's what we have in order for siblings to come together so that we can normalize this whole process, because a lot of times kids think they're the only one that are going through this at all. And that's a really difficult piece, especially for a child. So we get the kids together and we do play-based activities to try to get that relationship going back again. So that's one of the programs that we do. The other program that we do that is I'm hoping kicking off in full force in Kingsville as well pretty soon, is our homework club. So parents don't have the time or the energy to come home and sit with their child and do homework. Children that have a diagnosis, in addition to families that a parent or grandparent has diagnosis, after school is just chaos time. So there's no time for that. Then the parents have the guilt, the unnecessary guilt, of their grades, the children's grades dropping, problems at school, and all of those things. And I'm sure at Assumption University, there's probably examples of students in your school that have been affected by some type of life-altering illness, that you see those things happen with grade slipping and things like that. So we put Homework Club in place in order to try to overcompensate for some of that and take a little bit more stress off the family, giving them some more time to just be together. So we try to do these things in order to try to make their lives a little easier. But then we also have the things that we put in place in order to make their lives a little bit more fun too, because it's not just about medical and it's not just about homework or anything like that. It's also about normalcy. So we have a beautiful partnership with Lakeshore Cinema. I can't say enough about them. And once a month they give us the theater for an adult movie and give us the theater for a children's movie. So the adult movie is more focused on date nights, things like that, so that parents can have that time together. The children's movie is extremely popular, and the majority of the time the theater is jam-packed. So this is an opportunity for people to be able to come together feeling safe, that they're not going to have people looking at them if they don't have any hair. They're not going to be worried about people coughing and sneezing, because they don't come if they are sick, because it's just for people that are going through some type of difficulty and their immune system is also compromised. So they're able to come and feel safe. It's shut down to the general public. So we get to go see the newest releases. So November 12th, we are going to see Trolls. So I myself am very excited for this. I sign up every time. So we have these wonderful programs put in place for children and families so that they can feel the support and the love and the compassion and the mercy from hospice, and that same perspective that I received as a child, we're able to then bring forward to the future generations of kids that come through the doors at hospice. So it's a wonderful blessing to work here, and I absolutely love working with all of the staff and all of the disciplines, because I don't have exactly what Carol was saying. I can't do it all on my own. I remember first starting here, and I went in Carol's office and I said, my client. She said, our client. And every single day after that, I've learned more and more that it's not just hospice's client either, it's the community's client. So it's a wonderful privilege to be able to stand up in front of you guys and talk just a little bit. I can talk for hours and hours, but I know all of you probably have a bedtime, so I'll keep it short, but it's a privilege to be able to stand in front of you and talk a little bit about our services. So thank you.
I'm Paul Sharrow. I'm the spiritual care coordinator and chaplain at hospice. In coming to hospice, I came from working as a street minister, working with people without voices, without public voices. So the one thing about mercy that slides through the whole panel here is when you get in the middle of sickness, sometimes you actually in real life, real time, lose your voice, but sometimes you lose your voice because you can't say what you need. You can't say where you fit in the story. You see yourself as a diagnosis, and sometimes even hear yourself being described as a diagnosis versus your actual name. The story I want to give you is just one story. I get this phone call mid-afternoon on a Friday, and they said, Mrs. So-and-so is dying, and family are coming together, and we need you to be available. So found out the family was all going to be rolling in around 4 in the afternoon to the residence. And it was going along fairly well, and the one sib, you know, and these are fully adult children, when I call them sibs, they're adult children, said, you know, so-and-so, they're not going to come because they hate us. They will not come. And I said, well, don't you think maybe we should at least let them know that Mom is dying? They might want to have a chance for themselves to say goodbye. And they gave me a whole list of reasons why that wouldn't be a good idea, including verbal and possibly even physical violence. And I said, yeah, I hear your message and I get it. But I would like to make space if that's okay with you. I'm not going to force over you. I just have been at this bedside before, and I didn't ask the question and I regretted it. One of the greatest things we can do is practitioners and all the levels we work in here, and you following the story tonight, is realize that you have a chance to lend somebody a voice by your presence, by your advocacy. So the story unfolds, and about 6:30 in the evening, which now I've stayed on because I need to catch this guy. He lives out of town considerable. I called him and I get a hold of him. I get his wife first. He says, "Oh, he won't want to talk to you about that." I said, "Well, I've made the call. Would you be so kind?" "Yes." So she put the phone on, and he gets on, and I say, call him by name, and I said, "Mom's dying," and he said, "She's been not well at all." Like, that's true, but it has really progressed today, and I quite honestly, I don't have a crystal ball in these matters, but I really don't think this time tomorrow she's going to be with us. And I'm not telling you what to do, because that's not my place, and I'm not telling you how to fix what I'm sure has been difficult between you and your brothers and sisters. But I would like you to consider jumping in the car, coming down. We'll find a place for you to flop on the floor here somewhere. They had a good drive. I don't think I'm coming, not coming, but thanks a lot, Chaplain. Click. I tell the staff he's declined. I explained to the family. I got through. I didn't say he declined, I just said he needed to work through some ideas. I get a call, well, 8:30 in the morning. It's the nurse at the station, the nursing station at the house. You know who showed up? And I said, "Yeah, I'm guessing." His wife, his 2 kids, they're all sleeping in the sunroom. They're kind of looking rough in there, and it's smelling kind of ugly, but they're there. Oh, that's good. He got to say goodbye. Mom died, almost on cue, as I described to him. Not usually quite that accurate, but around midday, she did pass. The story ends for me at that point of the story, but the funeral came, and a very imagining mercy. See, mercy is an action, but it's also an experience. It's an action on your part. It's an experience when I receive it. Here's the experience part of mercy. So the dear pastor who's trying to conduct this service, I've pastored, and one of the things you hate is eulogies, because they go long, 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 and the funeral director's kind of looking at the clock, because he's probably got some other service to set up. This is happening. And the most wonderful thing happened in the long run. And you got to get this, because this is what this meeting's about. This is what the idea behind the compassionate community, behind the hospitals. This is human beings we're dealing with here. Pastor says, they eulogized to each other primarily instead of the congregation. They took up so much time I couldn't do my homily. But they did the homily. Because in the eulogy, the grumpiest, putting that in the nicest of frames, of the people stood up and said to the brother that they were mad at, "We got to stop this nonsense now. Mom's not here to referee anymore." Words were said back and forth. It was kind of like a chit-chat around the fire. That whole family walked away, actually restoring one in the story. I've checked in on it before I told the story. Several years later now, almost all the duration of my time here at hospice, it's still unfolding. They talk, they have dinner, they had Thanksgiving together. Mercy, when you and I extend it, always becomes an experience for somebody else. I don't know how it goes necessarily, but leave yourself open, not to what you're seeing, because what you're seeing will discourage you. But leave yourself open to mercy. I wished I could talk longer on that, but I want you to get it, because it's powerful stuff, and it's what the core of this whole idea of tonight is about, that we can do stuff together, but it turns out to be an experience for you. Thanks.
I haven't even started talking yet, and he left. Well, I, like the others, wanted to take a moment to thank our gracious host for the invitation. I'm honored and humbled to join such a distinguished panel of community leaders. I actually thought it was a mistake when I got the email, but Richard assured me that it's correct. My last experience with an Assumption Institute was the high school, and that didn't end very well. So I'm hoping tonight goes a little better. So I want to start with some things you probably already know. If we've done our job at all, you'll know some of these things. I am the CEO and Executive Director of the United Church. I'm also the recently elected Vice Chair of the Windsor-Essex Homeless Coalition. You may know that the mission was born out of a desire to serve. Then approximately 28 homeless men received coffee and donuts after church. The men and women of Central United Church on Olette understood that we are called to serve those in need. Now, some 44 years later, we serve an average of 726 hungry souls each day. Breakfast, lunch, supper, and of course our food bank families. You may have heard that since 1972, we've been funded by the community. No government funding and no funding from other agencies, with the exception of a couple of trillion foundation grants, which of course we're always grateful for. A couple of things you may not know. You know that we serve a lot of food. That's kind of our claim to fame. You may not know that we have over a dozen other programs. Things like bus tickets, diapers and formula for those in need with children, educational-based programs, return to work. We have our own wellness center coming online. We do about 3,500 free income tax returns every year. Something, who knew? Did you know, for example, that we recently amalgamated with two other charities? The first one was the Windsor-Essex Distress Center. This was a community gem that had been answering telephone calls from callers in distress since 1968. When they lost their core funding, the mission reached out and offered assistance. We knew that someone had to answer when the phone rang. Not doing so could be catastrophic for our community. In May of this year, we learned that Forgotten Harvest Canada was becoming insolvent. This organization has led the community in food rescue and redistribution. In fact, in 2015, they had saved over $3 million, or 1.25 million pounds of food. This food, which is perfectly good, was rescued from local farms, otherwise heading to the landfill. Now, 22 schools and 15 other agencies each week receive that fresh produce. These two charities are now fully integrated programs of the downtown mission. In fact, you may have heard recently the Distress Center announced the addition of text and chat services to assist in reducing the 143% increase to teen suicide attempts in Windsor-Essex. We needed to find a way to reach the younger generation. The FRESH program, which is the new name for Forgotten Harvest Canada, is also looking to spread their wings and offer assistance to even more families in need. The mission is trying to show leadership in collaboration with others, as we believe that collectively we are stronger and can help even more people. We participate with our partners here, the Compassionate Communities Initiative, and of course with Hotel de Grace Healthcare and lots of other partners. We're very proud to do that. And finally, you may not know that we recently acquired a new building. We are currently renovating it to create our new wellness center and social enterprise hub, pending permits, fingers crossed. Our mission statement, I'll just read it quickly, is the downtown mission exists as a place of sanctuary. In response to the mandate of the gospel, through outreach we provide food for the body, nurture for the spirit, shelter for the homeless, advocacy for the impoverished, and opportunity for human growth. So, that leads us to tonight's topic. You have learned a little of our history, you've been shown a glimpse of our growth, and have taken a peek at our future. You know some of the numbers, the data, and the facts. I shared our mission statement so you can better understand who we are. And I want to express something to you tonight, impress upon you that our mission statement is lived. It is not simply words on a website, but very intentional words that our staff, volunteers, donors, and board of directors believe in and support, words that I try to live by. They are the words in which, as the executive director, I base all of my decisions. They clarify the why, which of course is in response to the mandate of the gospel. So what is it like day to day? Well, in a single day, I can celebrate a victory of a guest who gets a job, a guest who stays clean and sober. In the same day, I can also experience the sadness of death, the pain of defeat, and the knowledge that a guest has stumbled or fallen completely. For me, personally, my day is filled with emotion. That might come as a bit of a surprise to many in this room, including my board members, who I won't identify, that a leader of an organization as amazing as the mission leads with emotion. I used to think it a weakness, something that I hid, something to be ashamed of. My education and past experience had taught me that a keen business mind, attention to details, work ethic, the ability to manage people, those were to be my strengths, not my emotion. All important attributes for sure. I can tell you though, the exact day and time that it all changed for me. It was May 15th, 2012, 11:30 a.m. It's pretty exact, and I don't remember most things, so that tells you how important it is. Everything I thought I knew about who I was as a leader had changed. My personal goals of climbing the corporate ladder, of becoming rich even, had come to an abrupt end. You see, I became an employee of the mission late in September of 2011 after closing a failing business and leaving my position on the board of directors of the very same mission. I really thought at that point I knew about poverty. I had grown up as what I call rough and tumbly. I knew firsthand hunger, dysfunction, and family addiction. I knew about bad decisions, about needing a second chance perhaps for the 10th or 11th time. I had lost count, really. I recall May 15th, 2012, as it is the day I turned 42. I can share with you that I awoke that day hoping, maybe expecting, a chocolate cake at home that evening. Maybe some socks or a tie from my sons. What I received, however, was so much more. I entered the dining room at the mission and was humbled and instantly knew that I was in the right place, that God, whose calling I had been ignoring since I was 12, had delivered me to the exact moment in time that I needed. I have since come to know that as much as I needed the mission also needed me. I can tell you with 100% certainty that you have not lived, you have not celebrated your birthday until 150 homeless and impoverished people, who by most accounts have little to be happy about, stand and sing you happy birthday. It was quite a day. That day, I also experienced my first hug by a man, not a relative, but a homeless man, who again wanted to wish me a happy birthday, but also wanted to whisper in my ear, "Thanks, man." I was in the yard that very morning, and I was hired, actually, I was the director of development, so I was there to raise money. But I was out in the yard as I did, and this particular gentleman was literally face down in the dirt. He suffers some terrible addictions, and I just said, "Hey, are you okay?" And he, kind of had to poke him a little bit. I was a little nervous, to be honest. I helped him up. That's it. He dusted himself off, and we kind of went our ways. He just wanted to say, "Thanks, man," to me, which I think I find that to be the most humbling of experiences. Answering the question about the day-to-day experience of offering frontline care to the most vulnerable, well, it's a heck of a lot of work. I'm sure I'm not alone in that sentiment. It's long hours, it's early mornings and late nights, it's evenings, weekends, and holidays. For me, it's 24/7. It's not, however, my job. It's not my work. It's my absolute pleasure. It's my calling. It's my passion. It's also sometimes stressful, as you can imagine. My mental resources are often stretched to the max. The business acumen I referred to earlier is needed. I am the very proud leader of an organization that has many, many moving parts. I am responsible for my staff, my volunteers, and most importantly, those that I serve. The mission is a place of healing, of love, a place of rebuilding a sense of self-worth, a sense of family. Day to day, I am blessed. I am given more love than I can offer, or perhaps even deserve. I am given an opportunity to offer a hand up and to right wrongs. Poverty, as we know, is an oppressor. Of that I am certain. I also know that love can break the chains of addiction and even end generational poverty. A kind word can lift a soul. A warm meal offers hope, a light in the darkness. I know all of these things to be true firsthand. I do a lot of public speaking, and I never talk about myself, my own experience. But I can tell you that these are firsthand experiences. And so that's how I know mercy. So I say, and I know there's a lot of educators in the room, books are great, education is key, but experience trumps them all. So I have no trouble imagining mercy in the city. Imagining the city without mercy, however, scares the hell out of me. So I close with a challenge. I challenge each of you. I challenge our city leaders, our fellow citizens, to do more, to give more, to love more, to be brave enough to lead with emotion, to serve openly with a servant's heart. There is no greater testimony of God's love on earth than to offer help to a man, woman, or child with no expectation of reciprocation. Finally, I'll take this opportunity to restate what I hope is obvious. The mission will continue to honor God by serving his people with love and respect. After all, is what we're called to do. Thank you.
And I'd like to invite someone to come forward to say a thank you. And as it turns out tonight, there's the perfect person in the audience to offer a thank you to our panel. It's someone who's much well-known and much loved by virtually everyone in the room here. Father Joe Quinn, if you could come forward and offer a word of thank you.
It's my pleasure to thank the presenters, all of them. This has been a marvelous evening for me. I came with great expectations, but the expectations have been met and overmet. It's really interesting that we can have in one room people who are so articulate, so passionate, and so involved in bettering the life of all of us. You know? There are some times when I'm sitting in my room and I wonder, are there people like that out there? And here we have a real indication of what they are all about. I was reading Viktor Frankl lately, and in his book, The Meaning, Man's Search for Meaning, he kind of raises the question, what is the world calling you to be and to do as a unique, irreplaceable human being? I think we're all searching for that, but these people have found the answer. They know what the world is calling them to do, and they're doing it, and that's marvelous. Janice began by giving 3 words. I'd like to give my own 3 words, my response, and I think I can speak for all of you, to what has experienced tonight. The first one is illuminating. I learned a lot tonight, but I didn't learn as much up here as I learned down here. It's marvelous to be with people who really feel what they're doing and are able to communicate that. And I was excited, and I'm a busy guy. I don't, but maybe I can volunteer to do something more. I don't know. But they gave us a clear picture of what our life is all about, and that is being part of a community and caring and sharing, forgiving, loving one another. The second word was encouraging. You know, when I watch American television, especially the news, it's very easy to get discouraged as to what's going on. And, you know, the things that we were talking or hearing tonight never get mentioned in any of those presidential debates. Nobody is seeming even aware of all of this. And it's nice to know that there are such articulate people in our community that are working so diligently to help all of us to appreciate our life and to enhance our life. And the last one is hopeful. You know? It's very easy to get discouraged and pessimistic and negative. But tonight I just felt the power of the Spirit filling us all with hope and energy to emulate what these people are doing. and to make the world a much better place for all of us. So thank you all. It's been a great night.
Thank you, Father Joe. So in conclusion, again, I'd like to just reiterate our gratitude to the hospice for allowing us to host our event here this evening. We're very grateful. Thank you so much. And also, Assumption's always very grateful for the support that it receives from the community. And just wanted to note, there is a free will offering basket outside the door. If you happen to be able to offer a free will gift, that'd be much appreciated as well. Anyway, that brings our evening to a conclusion. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight, and God bless you and safe travels home. Thank you.